Professor John McIntyre has been working in artificial intelligence for more than 10 years, having received his PhD in 1996. He recently retired as Pro-Vice-Chancellor of the University of Sunderland in the UK, where he worked for over 30 years and was Professor of Applied Artificial Intelligence. He is now Visiting Professor of Artificial Intelligence for universities in the UK, Egypt, Greece, and New Zealand, and works as a consultant for organizations around the world, helping them with their AI strategies and plans. He has published more than 150 peer-reviewed papers and has given many invited keynote speeches and presentations at conferences, seminars, and workshops globally. Since 1996, he has been editor-in-chief of Neurocomputing and Applications, published by Springer Nature, one of the world's leading applied AI journals. And in 2020, he established a new journal, AI and Ethics, with his long-standing friend and collaborator, Professor Larry Metzger in the United States. Professor McIntyre is now a passionate advocate for the development of ethical standards in the development of AI. He is a member of the International Neuro Network Society, a Fellow of the Royal Society of Arts and Commerce, a Chartered Engineer, and a member of the British Computing Society. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'll give you over to Professor McIntyre.
Good morning, everyone. I should say, wagwan. So, first of all, can I just say what a real pleasure and honor it is to be back here with you all at UCC, this wonderful island, Jamaica. Following on from something Professor Giles said, just want to make reference before I start my talk to the students that I saw yesterday, the student projects, and what fantastic work the students are doing, what passion the staff who support those students demonstrated. And I have to say, it speaks volumes about UCC as an institution. As Professor Giles mentioned, some of those amazing projects are being done by students at the associate degree level. That really is fabulous. And my congratulations to those students, and thanks for the opportunity to meet with them. And just to say again that this is a fantastic institution doing amazing things. And for those of you who are still studying here, you really are very lucky. So please appreciate it. So I'm going to talk a bit about AI in general. I'm going to talk about AI and how it is transforming education. Of course, we can see on the screen here, this is AI John. AI John is younger and more handsome than the real John, as you can see. But because we're in Jamaica, I thought maybe we should introduce the other John, and that is, of course, John Bond. That's not my car. I wish that was my car. Anyway, so I'm going to talk about how AI is changing education. First, just talk a little about me. As John, my old friend John Fulton mentioned, so I've been working in AI for 35 years. And boy, has AI changed in that time. I'm the editor-in-chief of these two journals. Neurocomputing Applications is now one of the world's leading applied AI journals. It's become an enormous endeavor, as I'll show you. But in 2020, I should say, my personal journey in AI has been from the guy who did some research in AI for my doctorate, then became the guy who built AI systems, then became the guy that told everybody that all the stuff that you hear and see in Hollywood movies about AI is rubbish, and AI is, a good thing and doing great things in the world, and not to fear AI, and then finally to the position of, I still believe all of that, but, and the but is this: AI technology has become so powerful that we have arrived at a point in AI similar to the point that genetic science arrived at about 25 years ago. And that point is to say this: the fact that you can do something doesn't mean to say that you should. And if you are, then you have to think very carefully about the impact, both positive and negative. And that's kind of this inflection point of AI, where we can do an awful lot of really interesting and very powerful things, but some of those things may have very negative consequences. And so, as Professor Giles already mentioned, the big questions of ethics in AI and the ethical development of use of AI are now really, really more important than ever before. And that's why my friend and I, Larry Metzger, and I developed this new journal, AI and Ethics, in 2020. It's new, it's now 5 years old, growing incredibly, and we're seeing some fantastic work now being published there. Oops. So we're in the middle of an AI boom. AI is booming all over the world, and generative AI is kind of the boom within the boom. And if you look at these data, these numbers are incredible. Not very long ago, about 4 years ago, there was a prediction that the global market in AI by 2030 would be about 125 billion. That's a big number. 125 billion is a big number. That's 4 years ago. Now, the prediction for 2032 is $3 trillion. That's an exponential rate of growth, and there is no other technology market, or indeed any other market in the world, expanding at this rate. And the astonishing element of this is the rate at which generative AI is dominating this market. What you see here is this is generative AI. The projections of generative AI as a percentage of all technology spend, not just spend on AI, spend on any technology. So from the point of R&D and commercialization and product development, generative AI is now absolutely swamping the AI landscape and the tech landscape, because everybody is now looking to find the ways to exploit the power of generative AI and, of course, monetize it. And we see that in R&D terms. So because this journal, Neural Computing Applications, is entirely about applied AI, this is the time in which we're seeing this boom of applied AI, and we're seeing more and more research in applied AI. And as you can see here, our journal has benefited from that significantly. Up to over 8,500 submissions from all around the world. It's a huge, huge endeavor. And I just wanted to take a moment just to kind of go back to first principles, because a lot of people were talking about AI, but because generative AI has kind of dominated the landscape, it's very easy to fall into the trap of thinking when we use the term AI, we're talking about generative AI. And actually, AI is much more than that. Maybe useful just to stand back and reflect. So first of all, our definition that is often used in AI is the idea of computer systems that can mimic human intelligence. There's a lot of ways in which AI does that. Generative AI is only one part of that. Expert systems, hybrid systems, there's all sorts of different elements of AI. But I actually changed the definition for a very specific reason. So My definition changes one word, and it's the last one. It changes from humans to nature. And there's a reason for that. So, for example, anybody in here got a cell phone? I'd be surprised if anybody in here doesn't have a cell phone. I bet that you didn't know that the way that your cell phone finds the optimal cell for your phone signal is an algorithm based on the way ants forage for food. Anybody know that? So, when ants look for food, they follow pheromone trails. They lay a pheromone trail, and if they go so far and the pheromone trail begins to decay, the ant can detect that it won't be able to find its way home, right? So it only goes so far. If it hasn't found food, it tracks back and goes in a different direction until it finds food. The first ant, there's a group of them all working together, first ant that finds food comes back with the food. The other ants can detect the food, and then they all follow the same pheromone trail, so that pheromone trail becomes reinforced. That's called reinforcement learning in AI. So you didn't know that you were using a form of AI based on the way that ants forage for food, but you're doing it every day. And there's so much AI which is based on nature now, swarming, flocking, various different elements of natural behavior in, for example, bats. So the robots, a couple of the robots yesterday were using algorithms which are effectively mimicking how bats echolocate. So there's a huge amount of AI which is not based on human intelligence, but based on natural intelligence. And in fact, AI has been around for a long time. People think it's a recent phenomenon. Back here in the 1940s, Warren McCulloch and Walter Pitts developed the first very, very simple AI models. Go all the way through to, let's say, certainly here in the 1980s and 1990s, Geoff Hinton, if you've come across his name, Geoff Hinton is a British scientist who moved to America. I did some work with him in the 1990s. He recently won the Nobel Prize. He also recently resigned from Google because he was very concerned about what Google is doing with their AI. And he wanted to tell the world that he feels there are a lot of risks. Move forward, Yann LeCun, who is the chief AI scientist for Meta, and then through into this most recent era, which is referred to as the third golden age of AI. And that's really the generative AI period. Something to take note of. Of course, if it's the third golden age, that means there was a first golden age and a second golden age. And each one of those golden ages, the first and second, was followed by what was referred to as a dark age, a period in which AI was seen as not having delivered, as having been oversold, and in which you couldn't get any money to work in AI, you couldn't get any research funded in AI, and if you were working AI like Geoff Hinton was, you were regarded as a bit of a kook, a bit strange. Why is he working? What's he doing in AI? That's rubbish. And so we're in this kind of amazing bubble of AI right now, and there are questions being asked right now as to whether or not this third age, this bubble, will burst. I think it's different, and it's different for a very specific reason. In those first and second golden ages, AI was only in the hands of elite technologists. Now, through generative AI, everyone in this room can make use of AI. In the past, AI was used on you without your knowledge necessarily. Now AI can be used by you to help you to do what you want to do. That's very, very different. So I see this period of AI as significantly different, and that's of course why we're seeing the huge commercial expansions and the huge R&D expansions. Can you get the slides back? There we go. And so just continuing that theme about, understanding AI, actually the term AI, it's not one thing. It describes a whole basket of different things, different kinds of AI, which are useful for different purposes. It's an umbrella term with lots of different tools and techniques. And of course, those tools and techniques aren't all suited for the same tasks. Certain AI is useful for certain things, some AI is useful for other things. And we know that, don't we? We know that in our normal lives. Because if I want to go and dig a hole in the garden, I'm not going to use the rake. If I want to weed the garden, I'm not going to use a spade. We know that, as soon as we look at those, we think, well, I understand that that tool is good for something, but it's no good for something else. And AI is exactly the same. There are certain forms of AI which are very good at things, like, for example, convolutional neural networks, which are a simplified model of the visual cortex in the human brain, and very, very good at very fast image recognition. But they're no good to do the generative AI tasks that you're familiar with ChatGPT. But ChatGPT can't do what convolutional neural networks do. So there is a range of AI tools, a range of techniques, and they fit to different types of tasks. And one of the things people get wrong in AI all of the time is choosing the wrong tool for the job. To choose the right tool for the job, you need to understand both the task and the tool. And that's a really important aspect of AI. And you'll hear terms which sometimes get bandied about and are misused. So the idea that AI and machine learning are the same thing, no, they're not. Machine learning is a subset of AI. And that neural networks and AI are the same thing, no, they're not. Neural networks are actually a subset of machine learning techniques. And in fact, deep learning and AI is often used as the same thing, and it's not, because deep learning are a subset of neural networks. So understanding how these things fit together is really important. Is there a way to stop that from happening? Oh, I'm back. And I'm gone. But not wearing them. Okay. So AI is good at a variety of different types of tasks. Things like pattern recognition, you wouldn't know it, but generative AI is effectively pattern recognition. So what generative AI does is you give the generative AI, like ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or Grok, either an instruction or you ask it a question. And based on the huge body of data it's been learned at, been trained on, it tries to form a pattern which generates the response. So generative AI is in fact a pattern recognition technique. Classifications, training, for example, neural networks on lots of prior data and training it to recognize different classes of objects. Kind of things which we do in data mining, which is to look at huge bodies of data, the kind of data that no human could ever really analyze, there's just too much of it, and extracting patterns from that data that humans didn't know existed. And if you're interested, that is how we found out that there's a hole in the ozone layer. A data mining technique was used to look at all of the satellite data, the weather data, and it was that data mining technique identified that there was a hole in the ozone layer. Of course, the hole in the ozone layer was already there, and the data were already there, but nobody was able to extract that knowledge from the data. And neural nets are pretty good, and different forms of AI are pretty good at doing predictive work. So what might happen next based on what's happened in the past? So as Colin Giles mentioned, Professor Giles mentioned, AI is already making a difference in an awful lot of areas. It's everywhere. Here in Jamaica, Professor Dalman and I have been talking about AI in agriculture and where that might fit, but in all of these areas, in some cases, in ways that you are not aware. Your banking data, AI is being used on your banking data all of the time, whether you know it or not. Anybody here watch Netflix? You know that thing which sometimes is pretty annoying, which says, here's what you want to watch next. That's actually an AI algorithm that's pushing information to you based on your behavior, which is also how social media algorithms tend to push information towards you, which is why social media algorithms, which are AI, create kind of little echo chambers, little bubbles in which we're giving you stuff we think you're interested in based on your behavior, largely to keep you online so we can monetize your time online. That's what they're doing. They're trying to addict you to the social media platform so that they can monetize your time. And that's AI. That's AI that's being used for that purpose. But loads of really positive applications in retail, in manufacturing, lots in health, huge progress in health. If anybody's been watching the news today, there is an amazing announcement on a degenerative neurological disease which AI has helped to find. It's not a cure, but it's an incredibly powerful treatment for, and that's another demonstration of the use of AI in very positive ways. And these are the kind of things that people expect to achieve with AI in business. They can reduce costs, get the competitive edge through innovating new products, obviously increase revenue, but loads of organizations get it wrong. And the primary reason, in my experience, is data. So they expect to be able to come and use AI, and without sorting out the data structures that they've got on which the AI would work. And if you don't do that, then AI really struggles. That's why the generative AI tools have been so powerful, because billions have been invested by the big companies in curating all of that data and creating data stores on which to train the AI, and that's why they're effective. So AI, of course, is transforming the way we work in lots of different ways. Workforce planning, professional identity is an interesting one, because anyone in this room under 25, the data suggests that in your life you'll have 7 careers, not 7 jobs, not 7 jobs, 7 different careers. And AI gives the opportunity to change your professional identity and therefore move into a different career space in a much more agile way. Lots on professional development, lots on learning. All the time I get asked, is AI going to take my job? All the time. My best friend's an accountant, and I love showing him the slides that say that accountant is one of the top jobs that's going to be taken by AI. He's not taking, but I love teasing him. So this tells you about the jobs that are declining, but also the jobs that are rising. It is clearly true. There is huge growth in the side of this chart, which is around AI, data science, and technology. And, you know, lots of people are worried about that, and are right to be worried about it, because AI is a disruptive technology. And all disruptive technology does this, always. If you look at this chart, the scale on the left is human productivity. So that takes us all the way back to just before the Gutenberg press. When the Gutenberg press was invented, so the printing press. So, you know, people were producing things, you know, Bibles scribed by hands. And then the printing press was invented, and we started to be able to mass produce information. And the chart shows us that that was an inflection point in which the rate of human productivity increased. And all of these all of these points on this graph are showing that technology comes and disrupts us. Progress, the human race moves on, but there is disruption at those inflection points, and AI is the inflection point of its time. When you look through some of those things, some of it, the invention of the tank on this chart is a bit of a worry, I think, but you can see the kind of things here in the later periods we're talking about, the cell phone, World Wide Web, some of the bigger technology platforms that we're familiar with now. All of these are disruptive technologies that have changed the way we behave, and society adapts. And that's what I think is happening now. We are in a period of the disruption, and society is trying to find the ways to adapt to this new AI world. And so Professor Giles stole my thunder when he said, I get asked the question all the time, is AI going to replace humans? And my standard answer is no. But humans using AI will replace those who don't. I'd like you to just pause now.
Check
just
your ear.
pause and just think that through.
What's that?
What does that mean for you? For you, right now, what does it mean for you? AI won't replace humans, but humans using AI will replace those who don't. Tell you what I think it means. It means that everyone in this room, if they don't develop some at least basic AI literacy skills, to be able to use AI effectively, safely, and appropriately, then you run the risk of being left behind. So, how do you get those skills? That's where education comes in. And I'll extend this because I think that organizations that embrace AI will outperform those who don't. By the way, I used AI to produce both of those graphics. One of them is the free version of an AI, and the other one is a paid version of an AI tool. Anyone want to guess which one was the one I had to pay for? It's the bad one. So I paid for the bad version, and the free version is the good one. Which just goes to show it's not always about what you're paying. Yeah, so organizations that embrace AI, I think will outperform those that don't. What does that mean for education? I think it means that universities, like this one, must embrace AI, because if they don't, they'll be left behind, because other universities will.
Sure.
And which universities will those the future students choose to study at? They'll choose to study at the university that not only gives them the degree qualification and the technical knowledge and skill in the field for their future career, but it also gives them the AI skills to be successful and not be left behind. And I think that's incredibly important. So AI is already changing education for university leaders, for teachers, and for students. AI, of course, can make education better. There's an awful lot of stuff, areas in which AI can be used, not always where it is being used. The first on that list is personalized learning. Go back to Netflix and social media, and you get stuff pushed towards you based on your behavior. This is what you want to watch next. This is the next piece of information. And that's been done because you as a person have been parameterized, as it's called. So there are data points about you. Who you are, where you're from, how old you are, the social structures you've got, the net connections you've got, the things you're interested in. And that profile, that AI profile, is used as a pattern matching algorithm to find information and give it to you because that's going to fit to you. In Netflix's case, it's what we keep watching on Netflix. It's Facebook, it's please stay on Facebook while we also give you some adverts and you're going to buy stuff and that will monetize your time. In education, that's actually the next module or the next assessment or the piece of work you need to do next. It's not the same piece as everybody else is doing at the same time. It's the piece that fits your learning best. Now that, just imagine that. If now your journey through your degree is not a linear one on the same path as every other student, it's a journey fitted to you by AI. So personalized learning is kind of a holy grail, I think, in education. I would say hardly anybody's got anywhere near it yet, but it is certainly an area of significant work and research. Certainly things like 24/7 tutoring, that is happening right now in ways that I think are really, really innovative, and I'll give an example a little bit later. But the idea of developing AI agents, not chatbots, don't call them chatbots, AI agents that can augment what human academics do is a very, very powerful new model of education. And I think that we'll be talking about that in due course in terms of what UCC are doing. So this idea of personalized learning, as I've already mentioned, the ability to really fit the education to you and your journey. And of course, there are risks. AI in education, AI in any field, as I mentioned earlier on, there are risks. Some AI systems have been developed badly. The first version of ChatGPT that was released publicly was deeply flawed, and people have died as a result. Died. That's real. ChatGPT 2 was released too quickly, in my opinion. Within weeks of that release, a man in Belgium who had some mental health problems was in a conversation with ChatGPT for a whole weekend, during which he told the AI that he was depressed and he wanted to kill himself. And the AI told him how to do it, and he did. So, there are significant risks if these AI systems are not, if there are not guardrails and constraints around them. And in fact, this area of bias is a very significant risk in AI systems, because the one thing we don't want to do is embed human prejudice and human discrimination into automated algorithms. And we've seen some examples of that for example, in facial recognition systems. If anybody's interested, there's a brilliant documentary on Netflix called Coded Bias. And it's about a lady called Temnit Gubru, who was a research student at MIT, and she was developing a system. Her idea was, she called it the Inspire Mirror. So the idea was, this is a bathroom mirror. You're gonna look at you get up in the morning, you're feeling terrible, and there's a facial recognition system embedded in it, and it recognizes your face, but it overlays on your face in the mirror a picture of somebody who inspires you. And in her case, it was Serena Williams, tennis player. But she used an open source facial recognition code, and she couldn't get it to work. And she thought she was doing something wrong, the code was wrong, the lighting was wrong, she couldn't get it to work. Until she put on a white mime mask. And that's because the facial recognition software is biased against people with faces of color. Wow. She, by the way, left MIT and set up an organization called the Algorithmic Justice League to deal with exactly this issue of bias in AI. She's an amazing woman. So have a look at that documentary called Coded Bias. It's really interesting. Anyway, so there are a number of very significant risks and issues around the ethical questions of development of AI. And of course, in education, some of those are significant. And we need to be clear, if we're going to develop AI for education, that we're managing those risks. So this is one example of a very good ethical framework for the development of education AI, which includes things like academic integrity, always having human agency, the balance between human and AI in the educational process, and I think in particular clarity of purpose. There are some early adopters who are way ahead of the curve. As you know, some of the American institutions are vast, big organizations. Arizona State went into an early relationship with OpenAI. They have done some of the work that I'm talking about on agentic AI development. So they've developed AI agents which are augmenting the teaching of the human academics to give students 24/7 access to AI tutors that are helping them to learn, and to learn in different ways. If anybody wants to know more about that, rather than take up the time here, please come and have a chat with me and I'll tell you about some of the things that's happening in those institutions. Arizona State, London Business School, California State, there's a huge range. I've been there, did some work with London Business School on what they've been doing. It's really fantastic, innovative work. It's also, in certain cases, extremely expensive. So the amount of money that's being spent on AI systems in these universities is really eye-watering. And I think even they now recognize, 2 years in, that maybe they went down slightly the wrong path and they're beginning to walk that back. There's a lot of institutions trying to catch up, of course, and we can see examples here of universities around the world that are trying to catch up with what's being done, for example, in Arizona State. Virtual tutors, I think, are really important, but will not replace human tutors. You'll read some of this stuff. I think this announcement in Israel was really interesting. That's not at higher education level, it's at secondary education level, but it's really, really impressive, rolling AI tutoring out across all of the schools. And of course, what happens is that universities tend to, and have reacted to particularly the generative AI boom by trying to police it. It's students cheating, and we've got to stop them. Just yesterday, I spoke to a fantastic colleague here at UCC, and she said, what we're doing with our students, we're telling them they can use AI to help them with ideas and structure, but not with content. My question would be why? Why can't AI help with the content? Tell you why it's important, because when they go to work, that's exactly what they'll be doing. They'll need to use AI to help with content, otherwise they'll be the ones that have been left behind. So trying to police AI, organization I work with in Singapore arbitrarily made a policy no more than 5% of assessed work can be produced by AI. Why? 5%. Why is it 5%? Why is it not 10%? It's just a number they made up with no real rationale. This idea that what we do is police the AI, I think, is wrong-headed. It places us in the wrong place, the wrong mindset to embrace AI going forward. And I think we have to change that. There is, of course, now a detection arms race. So, look, everywhere in the world, some students cheat. That's the way it is. The AI detection arms race is now developing tools to try and detect the use of AI. And what that chart on the right shows you is a lot of them aren't very good. And here's the risk. The risk is you use a detection tool and you accuse a student of cheating, but they didn't. Because actually it's the flaw in the detection tool. The detection tools create a lot of what are called false positives. So a false accusation of cheating is pretty serious, I think, and damaging to a student. We don't want to get into that, which is to say that right now, this technology is not fit for purpose. The AI tools detecting AI isn't really up to scratch. But in fact, this is an amazing piece of work. Far fewer students cheat than you think. What's emerging is a narrative that, in fact, people of a younger age are already becoming quite sophisticated users of generative AI tools. Those that have cheated regret it. And these data here, the bar chart you're seeing, what that shows you is that although quite a lot of students use generative AI, the fraction of students cheating, and that is to say using the AI to generate the content and then simply submitting it as if it was their own work, is 3%. 3%. So when you read these stories about the crisis of cheating because of AI, it's being massively exaggerated. And by the way, for any statisticians in the room, when you see a bar chart like this, you would always say, yeah, but what's the sample size? Because that's pretty important. If this is only a survey of 100 students, that's not very helpful. So the N is the sample size, and the N in that study is 2 million. 2 million pieces of assessed work in the UK. And here's another really interesting thing. That number hasn't changed in 2 years. So far, far fewer students cheat using AI than you think. They are using AI, but they're not cheating with AI. And that is a mindset shift. Embracing the idea that the students are learning to use AI appropriately is a good thing. So can we adapt? If the students are adapting, maybe we should try and get on that wave and adapt. Parents think that students need to use AI. Students think they need to use AI. And in fact, my view is it's essential that students use AI. I would change how we look at our approach to AI, away from trying to police it to requiring it. Actually embedding it into the teaching process and the assessment process. Here is your assessment. We want you to use AI to produce the response. We want you then to critique the response, find out where the flaws in that response are, and then use AI to improve the response up to the point you feel confident that it is fit for purpose. And then give us the narrative about how you did that. Kind of show you're working. My wife, Michelle, was here with me in July. She's a director of HR for a very fast-growing software company. 5 years ago, Michelle would have spent maybe 3 days writing an HR policy. Now, that's 3 hours. Why? Because AI does it. But the AI does it in 20 minutes. So what's the rest of the 3 hours? That's Michelle's expertise and knowledge being put in to improve the outputs of the AI so that the output is ready to be used. That's a proper professional process. That's what we want our students to be doing. So instead of policing it, actually requiring it. But we have to show them, and I would love you to take away these 3 words. We want to show them how to use AI effectively. That is to get good results. How to use AI appropriately. That's don't pass off the output of AI as if it's your own. Apply your knowledge and judgment. Learn from it. And safely. Do no harm to yourself. Do no harm to others. Those 3 words, I think, should become our mantra at UCC as to the way we are going to embrace AI. Academics need to embrace AI too. Every course, every module, every teacher, it's not just about courses in AI. There's a big difference, isn't there? I hope you can see from the point I'm making, about courses for students who want to go and work in AI, to courses in every subject where students will use AI. So And that is pretty challenging for universities, actually, because it requires a big mindset shift away from the policing. We've got to change our policies, we've got to change our assessment approaches, we've got to change the way we teach. But if we don't, I think we'll be the universities left behind by those that do. So I think it's an imperative. We've really got to make this shift. And just in the last 3 weeks, something very significant has happened in the world of generative AI, and it's this. OpenAI have released a version of ChatGPT which is free to students. Now, I have interesting feelings about this. First of all, OpenAI have demonstrated in the past that they're willing to release versions of products, as I mentioned earlier on, which are flawed and dangerous. The OpenAI models, in certain cases, are not the best models. There are other tools which do a better job, tools like Claude and Gemini. And I think this might be a bit of a marketing technique to kind of, lock people into using ChatGPT. However, as we can see here, a number of very big, prestigious institutions are making announcements that they're going to make this version of one AI tool available to all of their students. What that tells me is that institutions are now beginning to move down the path of embracing AI rather than to try to police it. And our AI steering committee here at UCC was talking about this very thing just yesterday. And by the way, AI is a great tool for research as well, and there are many really good examples of tools which can be used to help with research. But by the way, academics cheat as well. So for the students in the room, you can enjoy this part. Academics cheat. There are lots of examples, by the way, of academics using AI to write research papers. If you look at that one there, this is the abstract of a paper submitted to a journal. The abstract says, as of my last update, bit of a clue that they used AI there. And when academics cheat, sometimes they're really bad at it. This, believe it or not, is a graphic from a paper that was published in a journal called Fields of Microbiology. And the paper is about testicular cancer. And it contains two graphics. One is a metabolic pathway diagram, which is gibberish. And this is an anatomical diagram of the rat with a cutaway around the testes so you can show the anatomy of the testicular cancer. But that's its penis. That's some rat. So this, by the way, it's funny, but it caused an absolute scandal. So this was published in a reputable journal, the reputable publisher. The editor is a professor in Oxford. It's damaged her career and her reputation. It's damaged the publisher. And of course, it's damaged the reputation of the academics who cheated. So although it's funny, it has a real significant point that, this is using AI inappropriately and suffering the consequences as a result. Here at UCC, as mentioned, we met yesterday, our steering committee. We're shaping out a strategy for how we're going to use AI in teaching and learning and research, in corporate education and inside the university. And I really believe that UCC is on a path to take the lead in this in Jamaica. We've already talked a little bit about managing risks. I don't want to overblow this, but Jeff Hinton has already mentioned resigned from Google so that he could talk about the risks. The idea of AI replacing human creativity. I love this quote. This quote, I want the AI to do my laundry and dishes so I can create art, not the other way around. That's exactly right. In fact, you might be aware that there are now many lawsuits about the use of generative AI because the training data, I mentioned these huge bodies of data, much of that data was taken without permission. And so people like J.K. Rowling has sued OpenAI, saying she wants her material removed. And David Leslie, who's a friend of mine at the Alan Turing Institute, says all of the models are effectively illegal. So there's a real ethical question about all of that. There's the tricky issue of hallucinations. They're not really hallucinations, they're fabrications. This is when AI produces false information in its output. It happens because it's a statistical model, it's just a flaw in the model. So I really, really believe we should stop using the word hallucinations, because we associate that with the human mind, and recognize what they are, which is fabrications. It's a big part of how to teach students how to use AI safely and appropriately. And of course, there's other risks around deep fakes. There's some really terrible stuff. Scarlett Johansson, the Hollywood actress, has been the victim of deep fake pornography with her face, deep faked onto terrible images. The story there about Arab, there was a Teams call with 4 people on the call: CFO, CEO, Chief Operating Officer, and the Finance Director. And the C-suite guys told the Finance Director to move £20 million into 5 bank accounts in Hong Kong. So he did what he was told. There was only one human being on the call. The 3 other, the executives, were all AI avatars. It was a scam, and it worked. So I think the public is now more conscious of the risks of AI. Particularly, I think AI scams and deepfakes are a real concern. For you, by the way, this will happen. Be careful. Voice recognition, very easy to clone someone's voice. There's a case in Australia of a company where the directors used their voices as the passwords to the company bank account. They lost $30 million, I think. And it's not all about generative AI. There's other areas of concern. Things like facial recognition systems, I've already mentioned with bias. There are certainly things like weaponized AI, or autonomous weapons on the battlefield, I think, are a very, very significant concern. Here we're seeing some examples of those. Does anybody recognize that line? It's from Spider-Man. Spider-Man's uncle says to him, with great power comes great responsibility. The question is, can we trust big tech? Well, so far, the evidence suggests not. And there is a big question about whether or not big tech is becoming the big tobacco of AI. That picture there is from 1994. That's the 7 chief executives of big tobacco swearing under oath to tell the truth. And the question, they became known as the 7 dwarves, by the way. The questioner asked 2 questions, one by one. Are your products harmful and are they addictive? And they all lied under oath. Anybody spot the difference? That is chief executives of big tech companies 18 months ago doing exactly the same thing. So there's a big question about whether or not we can trust whether the big tech bros are acting in the public interest. So Professor Giles mentioned that another question I get asked all the time is AI going to surpass human intelligence? Well, I disagree with the opinion that was given earlier. Not in my lifetime. Not in my lifetime, I don't think. Will it happen ever is a moot point. It depends who you believe, really. Elon Musk thinks it's happening like next Tuesday. Not sure, but the guy who went on the stage with a block of cheese on his head, and I'm not sure I believe him. There are lots of conversations around definitions of that problem, or that question. Certainly I believe it's clear that the AI is getting, AI models are getting more and more powerful. There are problems with those models, which are increasingly also becoming difficult. But it's true to say that AI is here to stay and is going to be in every part of our lives. So what does it all mean? This is my personal view. Well, the way we live and work is already being transformed by AI. It's those three words. We need to use AI effectively, appropriately, and safely. Universities have to embrace AI, and I believe that UCC is going to lead the way in Jamaica. So, if we've got time, we'll take any 2 or 3 questions. Do we have time? Any questions? Well, I think looks like we're moving to a coffee break. Well, if you've got any questions for me, please come and find me in the coffee breaks or at lunch. I'd be very happy to chat with you. Thanks very much, everyone.